Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be going through my transfer targets ahead of Game Week 19. I know a lot of people will be free hitting this week, so you could potentially look to bring these players in your free hit. But if you're not looking to free hit this week, I have got 6 players that I would look to be bringing in ahead of the upcoming fixtures, potentially as replacements for the likes of Salah if you do want to take him out, because he blanks this week. There's then Leicester and Chelsea, and then he goes off to AFCON as well. So a few difficult fixtures, so I do have some potential replacements for him as well. If you're enjoying the content here on the channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. With everything happening at the moment with COVID, with postponements, this video could be obsolete in only a few hours, but we're still going to put it out anyway. We're going to try and bring you a video before Christmas, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy the stats anyway, regardless of what happens. The first comparison here is Sergio Reguilon versus Ben Davies. I do think that at the very least, what we can be doing at the moment with our free transfers is bringing in players from teams with number 1, good fixtures, but number 2, lots of fixtures left to play. And Spurs have obviously had a lot of postponements recently due to the snow against Burnley, and then 2 postponed due to COVID as well. So I do think that if you're looking to bring in a Spurs player, now might be the time to do it, because they've got at least 3 fixtures which need to be fitting in various places. It looks like double game week 22 will be going ahead. That's at least a prediction based on the schedule. If that is the case, Spurs will almost definitely have a double in 22. They might then end up having a double in 26 or 27. They'll definitely have doubles in 33 and 36 as a result of the postponements that have already taken place. If you take into account the fact that there might be future postponements, we might be looking at a triple game week on the cards for Spurs at some point, or at the very least 4 or 5 double game weeks. So I do think that due to the fact that Conte's improving Spurs, due to the fact that they've been pretty decent at the back recently, and also just the fact that there are some good budget options in their defence, and the fixtures being arranged, I think there are lots of reasons to potentially bring in some Spurs defenders. The 2 that I've chosen are Reguilon and Davies to compare. Reguilon's obviously got the great attacking potential alongside Emerson Royale. I do think he is worth paying a little bit more for than Emerson Royale. And then the other option outside Ben Davies, who's a great cheap option, is Eric Dyer. But I just think if you're going to go for Dyer, you might as well go for Davies. I think he's got slightly better underlying statistics. And if Sessegnon and Reguilon are out, he does have the potential to play left wing back, although most of the time it will be at left centre back. With respect to the fixtures for the 2 of them, really, really good for Spurs, and that's not even taking into account the double game weeks. Palace this week, if the fixture goes ahead, by the sounds of it, the Palace-Spurs fixture should go ahead. We don't know what's going to happen, though, in the coming days. Crystal Palace at home's a decent fixture. Then Southampton and Watford are 2 really nice fixtures as well, so the next 3 are pretty good. In Game Week 22, Arsenal is their single game fixture, but of course they will almost definitely have another fixture in there as well. Chelsea in 23 is not great, so you would hopefully bench them in that fixture. And then Southampton, and the fixtures are pretty good after that, and like I said, there could be future doubles as well, and it's unlikely that they'll blank many more times just because they've got so many fixtures to fit in. So I do really like the fixtures for them, and that's why I've also got one more Spurs player at the end of this. With respect to the underlying statistics for the 2, it is slightly difficult to compare the 2 because Reguilon has played double the amount of minutes of Ben Davies. So do take into account that Ben Davies is a much smaller sample size. But generally speaking, Davies comes out really, really well. Projected points-wise, Reguilon's aren't on there at the moment. Must be an error on the Fantasy Football Fix website, which we'll sort. No worries about that. But Ben Davies is around 17.3. You would expect Reguilon's to be similar around that. Some clean sheet potential over the next coming game weeks. The fixtures aren't perfect from a defensive perspective, but they are pretty decent. And I'd say 17.3 over the next 6 for a cheap defender is very, very good. Expected FPL points over the first 18 game weeks is very, very comparable for the 2. They're both performing quite well at 5.26 and 5.44. That means they're averaging almost 6 points per game week, which is a clean sheet and 2 appearance points, which is very, very good for a defender of any sort, especially a cheaper defender as well. Their non-penalty expected goals and expected assists is actually identical at 0.22. However, Ben Davies is majoritarily made up of expected goals, whereas Reguilon's is majoritarily made up of expected assists. So Ben Davies has actually been the greater goal threat, and Reguilon has actually been the greater assist threat. The reason for that, as you can then see by the big chances per 90, is that Ben Davies has had a few massive chances, therefore higher on big chances and higher on XG. I don't necessarily think that Ben Davies will get more goal-scoring opportunities than Reguilon, but he does appear to be getting some clear-cut chances when he goes up for corners, etc. So that is something to take into account. And he does bomb forward like that overlapping centre-back role that we've seen with like Rudiger and Basham in the past in the Premier League. There are centre-backs that do that, and Ben Davies does bomb forward because he is naturally a left-back. So he is getting more big chances than Reguilon, and he's also getting more touch in the box as a result. Again, a few of those are from corners, a few of those are from darting runs, but Generally speaking, looking at this, you would say that maybe Ben Davies is the one to own. Maybe it's not worth paying that extra 0.7 for Reguilon. I would say, however, over the next 10, 15 games, I do expect Reguilon's stats to continue at that rate or potentially increase slightly. I would expect Ben Davies to drop slightly. That's just what I expect. The stats don't suggest that, but I just think when you increase the sample size, a centre-back's unlikely to keep up 0.22 expected goal involvement per 90. But based on this, based on what I've seen, I think it's probably just worth going for Ben Davies and using the funds elsewhere, or just keeping it in the bank because we're going to need it at the moment. Let me know down below. Are you looking at either Reguilon or Davies? Are you even considering making defensive transfers at the moment, or are you focusing on the attack? For me, if I was making the choice this week, I'd go for Ben Davies. So players 3 and 4, both from the same club, similarly to the Tottenham section. We've actually got 2 Everton attackers, which sounds pretty silly considering how poor they've been. I do think that the main reason they've been so poor is due to Calvert-Lewin being out. I know that's a big thing to say, and there have been other injury issues as well, but I do think it boils down to the fact that they just haven't had a striker in their team. Yes, they've been poor defensively as well, but that all stems from not having that target man, not being able to sustain pressure, not having chances yourself. So I'm not saying that Everton I expect to be suddenly amazing now, but they've got really, really good fixtures coming up. Calvert-Lewin is now back in training. There's potential that he does feature on Boxing Day, and therefore, if you're willing to risk it on a free hit or as a transfer, I might be tempted to bring him in. I think for me, what I'm likely to do is wait one more week before making this move and then bring in either Calvert-Lewin if he looks really fit, or if he still looks completely off it, I might just go for Demarai Gray for the time being. It does also depend on position, right, and price, because Calvert-Lewin's a £7.9 million striker, Demarai Gray's a £5.6 million midfielder. But I do like the Everton attackers. I think they're all pretty reasonably priced. Even if you go for someone like Townsend or Doucouré, I just think that for me, Demarai Gray passes the eye test. His underlying statistics aren't awful, although they're not great, and I just think Calvert-Lewin is definitely the best option there. Fixtures-wise, they are fantastic. They've got Newcastle twice in the next 6 game weeks. They've also got Burnley, Brighton, Norwich and Villa as well. So I'd say over the next 6, I would expect quite a few goals for Everton, despite the fact they haven't looked great recently, especially if Calvert-Lewin is back. The one thing that I should note before we even look at the statistics is Calvert-Lewin was on penalties for those first 3 game weeks. I believe he had 2 penalties in the first 3 game weeks. So it is worth noting that as well as having pretty good underlying statistics non-penalty-wise, he is also probably going to be back on pens. I don't see any reason why he suddenly wouldn't be, especially the fact that Richarlison is touch and go for fitness constantly as well. So I do think that Calvert-Lewin will take the majority of penalties. The main issue that we've got with making this comparison between Gray and Calvert-Lewin is the minutes played for Calvert-Lewin is so small. It's not even 3 full game weeks worth, 248 minutes. Demarai Gray's played an extra 1,000 minutes on top of Calvert-Lewin, so that is worth noting. Therefore, I'm not necessarily going to do a direct comparison. I'll just discuss the statistics from the two. Expected FPL points per 90 for Calvert-Lewin of 8.35 is probably unsustainable. It was similar to what we saw from Antonio, if you remember, in the first 4 game weeks. Antonio and Calvert-Lewin were both going absolutely crazy in those first few game weeks. Antonio has dropped off massively despite looking incredible, and I do suspect that Calvert-Lewin will not be able to maintain 8.35 expected FPL points per 90. That's the equivalent of a goal and 3 bonus points every single week. It's just not going to happen. Non-penalty expected goals plus expected assists. I do expect Calvert-Lewin to be able to sustain this, however. 0.55 is sort of what you'd expect from an £8 million striker. It is majoritarily made up from expected goals, and like I said, when you add penalties in, it starts to reach sort of 0.65, 0.7, and that's when you start to get to, wow, he's fantastic value, and I do think he can maintain a relatively similar level there. Demarai Gray's 0.34 is sort of representative of what he's been like across the season. He's passing the eye test, he looks fantastic, but he's not always got the best underlying statistics, and 0.34 really isn't that impressive. However, he is only 5.6 million, and he does have a great finish on him, and he's performing pretty well this season, and he is likely to play 90 minutes most weeks, or at least start most games. So I think you do need to take into account he's pretty cheap, there's really good fixtures, and you maybe would expect that to increase slightly with the better fixtures coming up. Big chances per 90, Calvert-Lewin has 1.45. That's because he had 2 penalties and also a couple of actual big chances as well. Demarai Gray's 0.14. is really quite poor there. You're looking at sort of a big chance every 7 or 8 games, which really isn't that impressive. And then touches in the box, not that impressive for both, but Calvert-Lewin's 5.44 is pretty decent. Demarai Gray's, considering he can play sort of left mid, right mid a little bit deeper, 3.62 isn't terrible. So I wouldn't say Gray's stats are terrible, but they're not mind-blowing, and they are the sort of stats you would expect from a £5.6 million midfielder. It's not like Gallagher, where you're saying he's a cheap midfielder, but he's putting up elite stats. He's a cheap midfielder putting up relatively cheap stats, but I just think the fixtures are great, and I don't see that many other options at that price. Calvert-Lewin, statistics are incredible, but I don't necessarily expect him to sustain quite that level when he plays with a bigger sample size. However, last season his stats were really good as well, and I just think he's a sort of striker which will get opportunities. He's on penalties, there's good fixtures. If he can maintain fitness, I think he could be a fantastic option, and he might finally be that striker we've been looking for. Let me know down below. Are you considering bringing in Calvert-Lewin this week, potentially on free hit against Burnley? Are you going to wait a couple of weeks and see what his fitness is like? I definitely think it's going to be worth bringing him in future game weeks. So this final comparison is born from the news that the Liverpool-Leeds game as well as the Watford-Wolves game has been postponed for Boxing Day. I expect more to follow. This video, like I said, could be obsolete if the Spurs and Everton and Manchester United games were all postponed as well. But at the time of recording, it was the Liverpool-Leeds one was the big announcement. And that means that a lot of people are potentially looking at selling Salah. The reason for that is, yes, it's only one game he's missing now. He's then got Leicester, which is a decent enough game, really. I would probably captain him. Leicester looked really poor defensively. I mean, it was 3-3 in the Cup, and that was with a Liverpool, D side, pretty much. It was not a very good Liverpool team. So I do think he's a good captaincy option in 21, but in 20, sorry. But then in 21, he plays Chelsea. And then from game week 22, probably game week 23, maybe game week 24, he's at AFCON, missing out. So you're likely going to get blank, Leicester, Chelsea, blank, blank. Across 5 game weeks, you would expect someone like Son or Ronaldo to definitely outscore him, especially if you take into account the fact that you could captain Ronaldo this week against Newcastle. You could captain potentially Ronaldo next week against Burnley. You've got Son in game week 21. You could captain against Watford. So they're also really, really good captaincy options as well when Salah's either going to be completely missing or have some trickier fixtures like Chelsea. So I'm not necessarily saying you should sell him. Completely dependent on you. You might decide to free hit this week, free hit in 22, and therefore you're dealing with 2 of the potential blanks for Salah. Therefore, you might want to keep him. So I'm not necessarily saying you should, but if you do, I think Son and Ronaldo are probably the 2 main options. You do have the option of downgrading completely and spreading the funds. The issue is you're going to want Salah back in. So unless you're planning on wildcarding just after AFCON or during AFCON and you're going to wildcard Salah back in, I probably wouldn't take all the funds out of that position. Therefore, I think Son, or maybe like a De Bruyne in midfield, or you relocate the funds to the strikers, and then in 2 moves, you can go back to Salah when he's finished AFCON. So around game week 23, when Man United play West Ham, you could bring Salah back in then. You've got lots of different options. Sorry, game week 24 when Man United play Burnley. I don't exactly know when Salah comes back from AFCON. I think it's 2 games he's missing. So they're the 2 options, Son and Ronaldo. Who do I think you should go for then? I think it is very, very tricky. I think it does depend on if you want to upgrade one of your strikers. I think it depends if you want to use 2 transfers because you're not going to be able to do it in 1 move. You're going to have to downgrade Salah to like someone like a Bowen and then go from Ronaldo and then go from a striker up to Ronaldo. So it's going to require 2 moves. There are a lot of different things. Fixtures wise, I do slightly prefer Manchester United, but not that much. And like I said, Tottenham will have a double game week almost definitely in 22, but Manchester United are likely to have a double in 22 as well. They could even potentially have a double in 21. So both teams with really good fixtures, both have upcoming double game weeks. So I don't mind either of them with that respect. I think this week, Ronaldo is a fantastic captaincy option. So if you don't have a captaincy option outside of Salah for this week, you might want to go for Ronaldo just because then you've got your captaincy option there. I think if you're on a free hit, you've got to go Ronaldo this week. It's too nice for a fixture. If we compare their underlying statistics, Ronaldo does come out on top on every single underlying statistic, apart from minutes played, which Son has played more minutes. Projected points over the next 6 game weeks, Ronaldo's projected to get 39.1 points, which is the highest, 26.4 points for Son. So the Fantasy Football algorithm prefers Ronaldo by 13 points over the next 6 game weeks, which is quite a stark contrast between the 2. Expected FPL points per 90 over the first 18 game weeks. Ronaldo has 6.33, which is incredibly high for a striker, considering midfielders get an extra expected FPL point for a clean sheet, an expected clean sheet, and an expected goal as well, because they get the extra point for the goal and an extra point for the clean sheet. So for a striker to be higher than a midfielder, it is very, very impressive. And that does come out in the underlying statistics with respect to expected goal involvement. Ronaldo's expected goal involvement is 0.69. That's non-penalty. And do bear in mind that Ronaldo's taken the last 2 penalties for Manchester United, and Son's is 0.51. So even without pens, Ronaldo's definitely coming out on top here. Of course, like I said, if they get a clean sheet, then Son gets an extra point. And if Son scores, he gets an extra point. But strikers get more bonus points for goals as well. So it does tend to even itself out, although it is slightly in favour of midfielders. Big chances per 90. This is likely slightly skewed by the 2 penalties that Ronaldo's had, but it's 1.05 for Ronaldo, 0.73 for Son. Both of those are fairly impressive. Son's getting 3 big chances every 4 games. Ronaldo's getting over a big chance every game, which is very, very impressive. And then touches in the box is probably the biggest contrast between the 2. 6.57 for Ronaldo is very, very high versus 4.24 for Son. That is because Ronaldo's a striker and Son plays off the left. However, they've switched back to a 3-5-2 recently, Spurs, rather than a 3-4-3, although they did also play the 3-4-3 midweek, so I'm not sure which one they'll prefer. When they play a 3-5-2, Son's positioning is excellent. He plays right up alongside Harry Kane, and therefore I think if he stays in a 2-striker formation, he will get more touches in the box. It's really, really difficult to decide between the two. I'll be honest. I think I might play the free hit this week. If I'm not, I think Salah to Son is slightly more appealing for me, just because it's not going to require 2 transfers. And also, I do think that Son will get fairly close to Ronaldo over the next 6 game weeks. And I just think it's easier. Then I can just go straight back from Son back to Salah in game week 24-ish when Salah's back from AFCON. So I think that's what I prefer. Let me know down below. You keeping Salah? You free hitting? If you are selling him, Son, Ronaldo, or potentially someone else, very, very interested to hear your thoughts. I think I'm leaning towards free hit. After that, it would probably be Salah to Son, although I do really like Ronaldo for this week as a captaincy option. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 19 transfer targets video. We'll see how long it takes before this video is completely obsolete and all of the games are cancelled. But I hope you are enjoying the content here on this channel. And we want to wish you, from everyone at Fantasy Football Fix, if this is the last video you watch before Christmas, a Merry, Merry Christmas. We appreciate the support so much over this year so far. We've obviously stepped up the content in this FPL season. It's obviously been quite difficult with a busy period and so many game weeks, but we are trying really, really hard. And we appreciate the support so much. If you do want to support us in some way, like, comment, and subscribe. All 3 of those things are completely free to do. Outside of that, head over to fantasyfootballfix.com, sign up for free, use some of the features that I've gone through today. The price predictor is another great thing to track recent price changes and also predicted price changes as well. There are so many cool features on the site. Definitely worth checking out, but we do appreciate the support even if you're just here watching today. Thank you so much, guys. Have a brilliant Christmas. Cheers. Bye-bye.